Welcome, everybody, to Meet the Sponsors. Today we have a special guest, Joe Parsons, aka Monster Joe. You guys might know Joe. He's been involved with Monster Energy since 2002. Joe and I both started in racing around the same time. I was the president of a shoe company, and he was the MIS and computer and web designer for Toshiba. And he went over to Monster, got involved with their tech end, and then migrated over to racing, where I was in the shoe industry and migrated over to Core. And then we met at Core, where Joe represented Monster, and he's now been with Monster ever since. Joe's been dealing with more athletes and sponsorships, I think, than anybody else I know, and he's been doing it longer at Monster than anybody else I know. So, Joe, how many years would you say you've been dealing with athletes, and how many athletes have you dealt with over the years in all different disciplines?
Well, it's a hard one to say on let's say numbers per se, but anywhere from the off-road spectrum, whether that be desert racing or short course racing. You can look at the drifting world with the likes of like Ken Block and so forth. Von Gittin Jr., who we have over there, we've had for a while, all the way back to bringing Kenny Bernstein out of retirement and putting him in a funny car in 2007 for a couple of years.
I remember that.
Uh, Taking, rusty old Jerry Welchel out of the shop and throwing him in a race truck, or even, guys like Carmichael. The list can go on and on and on. And it's really not about how many athletes one works with or one doesn't. It's what you learn from each one. Yeah.
That's a really good point. And what they can also learn in terms of what amateur or new athletes need to do in order to attract a brand like Monster. So Monster Energy obviously sponsors to promote and sample and create recognition for the products. What do you look for, and what do athletes need to know about approaching Monster if they want to get a sponsorship from Monster? You've been doing this now over 20 years. What have been the most successful approaches that actually land somebody a sponsorship with Monster?
You had a segment on Meet the Sponsors a while back where I think you had an individual from Coca-Cola on,
Al Rondon.
and I think he said a couple cool key messages that I would tend to agree with. Is you don't get anywhere and you don't get anything without networking. We were a brand that came along, and we were nobody. A company is only a bunch of people. A brand is made by people. The company doesn't make a brand. It's the people that make that brand. And at that time in 2001, 2002, when you start to look back at all the different brands that coincidentally come from Southern California.
Yeah, true.
There are a lot of global brands that when you start to dissect it, I mean, let's look at Troy Lee. He's a native Californian, well known beyond California borders. Mm-hmm. So if you can start networking in the likes of those from the beginning, it definitely makes those highways more bridgeable, right?
Yes.
And that's the one thing, like for me, just growing up in California, growing up around the right people that became those people working at companies. I immediately had my own LinkedIn before it was, yeah.
Well, you're a very, very technologically astute, so you knew technology way before most of us did, and I think that's another element where you were able to help Monster in that approach.
Yeah, in the beginning, after the Y2000 bug hit,
Yeah,
a lot of the IT sector had a mass, furlough program go in effect. And I had been with Toshiba for, call it 10 plus years. So my exit package was not so bad. It allowed me to live probably another year of not having to worry about looking for work.
yeah.
And coincidentally, just knowing the right people got put in the right hat. Hanson's Beverage at the time was looking to launch a new product called Monster Energy, and they needed a website. Well, that's what I had done a lot, but my forte was not web development. It was all the sports you see our brand that plays in, whether it's growing up with Robbie Gordon, or having relationships with the surf industry or any one of those avenues.
Yeah.
So I got brought on to launch monsterenergy.com, and with that was able to add that surf culture, punk culture feel that we all grew up with. And then 2 years after that, the president said, "Hey, you know what? Go find somebody to do that stuff. I want to push you over here, and you can go have fun over here."
Nice. Well, one that place I remember where you had a lot of fun was going to X Games back when X Games was just a few years old. Tell us a story about how you used to go to X Games with a pocket full of cash. I can't believe how much money you used to take just in dollar bills. And tell us what you used to do.
Yeah,
That seemed pretty fun.
at that time, X Games had come to Los Angeles, and it was really close. It's in our backyard. I think that time it was the Home Depot Center, I believe. And we were able to speak to our president and convinced him that, hey, we may not know who's going to win. We may not know the price tag of everybody. And at that time, you had Mountain Dew, who was actually a bigger player in X Games. So you had a lot of beverage, as I would say, it being blocked.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it all had to be really kind of last minute type deals, in order to really, otherwise they wouldn't promote you or they wouldn't use that athlete if he's another brand, because Pepsi and Mountain Dew, they're not going to showcase
Right.
those.
Right.
But they can't take away the fact that the guy just won the event, or took third for that matter, on live television. So we came up with a plan to approach the athletes that were guaranteed to be in the final segment of their discipline, approach them with a, 5-10 grand cash, no contract. And in the event that they get on the podium, is to put our product, nice, high, and proud. And then we would start a relationship moving forward after that, if that's how it worked out. Some did, some didn't. But it was just a quick way to kind of just, get involved in the right environment, the right scene. It's kind of like that one movie. Who's that movie? Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Finding Ferris. We're always looking for a Ferris in every culture, every subculture, every country. There's a Ferris everywhere. There's the cool kid on the block. There's the cool kid in high school. There's the nerd in high school. They're all their own little subcultures. And those are really what we look for, is the influencers within those subcultures. You don't have to be an athlete that wins races.
Excellent.
You don't have to be an athlete that loses races, but they all know you show up to the dance, right?
That's excellent. So if someone today is looking for a sponsorship from Monster, they don't necessarily have to be the top athlete in their category. They have to be an influencer within their peer group. And I guess that now, with, especially through COVID, our acceleration online and our acceleration using digital connections and social media, and everybody's online nowadays, everybody's an influencer, you probably have a lot more to choose from. What does Monster look for today when determining who to select as a brand ambassador? Will somebody who maybe is not an athlete or doesn't race have just as much of a potential to become sponsored as someone who's on the podium every weekend in their relative series?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a hard one for me to even answer these days, because we as a brand, our pillars have grown, right?
Yeah, good point.
So back in 2001, 2002, 2003, I might have been in touch with a lot of those pillars really, really close, and understanding those subcultures. But now with the likes of gaming and all, these social influencers, and for me, I'm an old school dude, I get it. We were there before Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all that. But
Yeah.
if I was doing stuff with people back before then, they were my influencers, right? But they had street credibility in order to be my influencer.
Yes.
Nowadays, the problem I see, not just in general with influencers, is where is their street credibility? Who are they behind those layers, So it's an interesting question to ask someone like me, as opposed to a newer person in a company who's really engaged in that subculture and understands it a lot better than I do, and puts more value on it than I do. But it's definitely happening. There's definitely a space for it and a place for it. But just from within my realm of where I play, I'm always looking. I'm looking. A farmer never stops planting seeds, right?
Good point. That's a great point.
And you always got to continuously look for the next generation, or even two generations, beyond, and kind of bet the farm, if you want to say that, or gamble on that athlete. But the success of that athlete, the story is that much better. So it's not so much about the athlete's success in winning, it's the success of his progression of himself.
Excellent.
And obviously it's a lot less money to start with a younger audience, a younger participant, a younger athlete, than just going and picking a world champion, right?
And growing with that person. That's a really good point. So
Yeah.
you've grown from Southern California, then you went national United States. Now you're running Europe, Middle East, Asia, Africa, or explain the markets that you're
Yeah,
in
I
now.
mean, my immediate territory is Europe, Middle East, Africa. Yeah.
Nice. Wow.
But obviously, the one that takes me further is obviously my Dakar, my cross country rally. Yeah. So that's taken me all over South America for the last 10 years, and it's taken me to Saudi Arabia for the last 3 years. And who knows where it will take me as well. It's taken me to Russia, it takes me to Morocco, it takes me all over the world, which is awesome. I love it. But my market where I base here in Poland is I look after Europe, Middle East, and Africa on special marketing projects.
Nice. We have someone. We have to mute somebody there, George. I think we
So
allowed.
so I mean that it keeps me quite busy.
We're in California. It's just my phone has a Texas.
Hey, could everybody please mute the microphones? There we go. Got it. Okay. Thanks. All right. Sorry.
Yeah, so that between cross country rally and Speedway World Championship, that keeps me pretty busy.
The FIM World Championship, right? Holy crap.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
How many events is that a year?
It's funny. I have 6 athletes that are racing in the World Championship, but I have 8 athletes in the sport. In Poland, the sport is bigger than the World Championship.
Wow. Wow. I could see
So
that.
in addition to the 10 rounds of World Championship, we have 70 rounds in Poland.
70? Holy cow.
Yeah, because it's pyramided identical to a soccer club. So you have 8 clubs. So you're going to race 7 at home and 7 away. And then after that, then the semifinals and then the finals. And all of that is all televised. All of the races are televised in Poland. It's massive. It's bigger than soccer here in Poland.
Wow. That's a really good analogy. In the United States, we tend to think that, all of the sports that we're involved with is the big sport, whenever it's racing or baseball or football or basketball. But overseas, soccer really is, and international soccer really is a dominant sport. So when you get something like FIM in Europe that is at the same level as soccer, that's huge. Those athletes must be getting a lot of visibility for the brand.
So this past weekend, we had the second round of the World Championship, and this took place in the National Stadium in Warsaw City, downtown center. We had 55,000 fans.
Damn.
Full stadium.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish racing was like that here still.
Yeah, finding sponsorship it's not easy. There's no one simple tick the box. A brand like ours is completely just so unique that it's hard to receive an email from someone and explaining to us, you know, who they are and what they do in their program and what they can do for us and this and that. 9 times out of 10, even if it's a relatively nice deck that's been sent to you, the budget's been filled 2 years ago. You know what I mean? We have to work in 2 years in advance. Yeah.
Wow.
Otherwise, we just don't have all of the pieces together to run with it. You know, the contract's not signed, for instance. You know, that might take 6 months, right? So if I do a 1-year deal, by the time I get the contract solidified, the deal's probably over.
Is that because of legal reviewing the contract on both ends? Is that,
Just,
or
you know, when you have, you know, 600 athletes and contracts need to be done, and distributor contracts, sponsorship contracts, music contracts, you know, all kinds of different, you know, contracts in general, there is a bottleneck at times. So I've always felt that if I'm going to do a deal with anyone, I need to do at least a 2 to 3 year deal so that we can both leverage the program and build a snowball. You know what I mean?
that makes
You
sense?
know,
What
you
do you
look
look
at
for
guys
now from the
like,
athletes? What do you want
yeah,
them to do on
Johnny
your
Greaves.
behalf?
You know, I signed Johnny Greaves in 2006, and he's still with us.
Nice, nice. You probably
You know?
also sponsor CJ now, right?
Yep. And the same with Shannon Campbell. You
Nice.
know, we signed him in 2006. We
I remember those
signed
days.
Cameron Steele in 2007.
Those were back in the days when you
Yeah.
were doing the bat cam in core. I remember when Monster
Yeah.
had the bat cam, and you had Jerry
Signed Pro
Balsho. You mentioned him in your
Kawasaki
opening
in
statements.
2005. You know, so a lot of our sponsorships, there's a lot of legacy programs that are with the company. You know,
So you're with you're with these athletes all these years. What is it that they're doing that makes you want to renew with them? It's obviously more about just a logo on a helmet and a race suit and a car. They're obviously doing something else that is of value to Monster, so that you renew on an annual basis. What are they doing that provides such value?
well, it's easy to discontinue a contract,
Ah,
right?
interesting. Yeah. No. Yeah.
That's too easy. That's just like, oh, next, right? I'd rather work with that program and develop it and create a story. Maybe it pays out, maybe it doesn't. But if it does pay out, the payout is so much more rewarding because you're creating the human side of the story. And I believe people can grasp, no matter what audience you are, people will watch stories about people. You know, and I feel it's great to be with an athlete or a race program, more on the athlete side, because it's more personable, is to be able to work with that athlete over a period of time through the highs and the lows to create a nice, compelling story.
Wow. Well, I wish all
Of course, you have
sponsors
the
had
athletes
that
that you
attitude.
sign just for winning, right?
Yeah. Now, that's a good point, because anybody could win any given weekend, but not everybody can tell a story over the long run. And stories are interesting because people remember stories. People don't remember statistics. How many times you got in first place, second, third, you know, what year you had the championship, how fast you were. Nobody remembers those things, but they remember
Yeah.
the story that you can tell.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of
And
stories that go
especially
way
if you
back.
can, you know, look back 10 years and create a story today of the past 10 years,
Ooh,
and that maybe nobody knew that story was happening.
ooh,
And now you release it and you capture a whole different audience that they didn't even know that was happening, but yet you were sponsoring or you were endorsing that program for the last 10 years.
yeah.
Yeah. So maybe that whole sponsorship was never about winning. It wasn't about failure. It was about all of it. You know, you can take a great story from all the way from some kid that races go-karts who may not win, but he's going to get older. He's going to have to financially do something and move on to the next class, right? There's a human side of that, right? And I always feel it's great to connect to that side in the longevity of sponsorship. So that's why if you look at a lot of the athletes that we have, we don't just get sponsored athletes and then get rid of them.
You know, that's a good point.
We
I've
tend
never
to
looked at
build
it
a
like that,
story
but I
with
can
them.
see that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Almost all the monster athletes that I can think of are long-term athletes now that you say it.
Yeah, so you're constantly investing in that story, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so this year, the year 2022, Monster celebrates its 20th year of the brand,
Damn.
right?
And
So we can bring all those athletes that have been with us for the last 20 years or 15 years or 10 years, and they can tell a compelling story of where the brand was, where the brand is, and that our bottlers and distributors who are new in the business can hear that story from them.
yeah. Nice. So it almost sounds like there's hope for a lot of young athletes, maybe racers who are starting out that don't yet have a sponsorship, but can tell a good story or are part of a good story. That's something you might be listening to, and they could start small and grow a sponsorship into a longer, larger relationship. So it
Yeah.
almost sounds to me, Joe, like Monster Energy is still open to sponsoring new athletes with potentially good stories.
Yeah, I mean, if I look at just myself in the last 2 years within the speedway world, any one that I have signed recently has always been the next generation that I'm gambling on. Yeah.
Hmm.
And because I can work with them, they have no bad marketing habits because they've never, and a lot of these kids, they didn't approach me. I approached them by going to the races, by talking to the right people. Is he the next kid? Does he have the potential? All of those things. I don't need someone to send me that stuff. We at the company need to be able to do that so that we can approach those individuals, because when we approach some of those junior riders, I can say they're starstruck.
Hmm.
They're so honored that, wow, this big company Monster wants to come and sponsor me, even if it's a $5,000 or $10,000 deal. But I can look and gamble for the future. I can go, okay, I can gamble with this guy for the next 10 years. It's not a massive investment, but the payout could be huge. Or I can just go and get the champion right now and pay him 100 grand.
Right, right. Yeah, I remember it was over a decade ago, 10, 12 years ago, when you first went over to head up marketing for Europe. You had no athletes. And I remember you and I had a conversation. I'm like, what are you going to do? You said, I'm just going to go find the best of the best in their little niches. And I got money and I'm going to pay them. And we're going to bring them on board. And then,
It's funny. It's an interesting story on, I got sent over in the beginning of 2010, end of 2009.
so 13
And
years
I
ago.
needed to somehow build this brand. And I was based in Budapest, Hungary. I didn't speak Hungarian. I'm right there. American just dropped off. I was living in a hotel for 3 months, and I had all the Monster drinks on my balcony because it was really cold. I didn't have to refrigerate them,
Nice.
and I would fill my backpack up, and I would go onto the different trains. And you had like the green line, the yellow line, the blue line, and all those lines would be like, say, a certain one would go to the high school, a certain one would go to the college, a certain one would go to the business districts.
Yeah.
So I would find the right ones that would fit our target demo and just start handing out cold drinks to people. People were like, why are you handing those out? So the story goes on is I met the local Oakley company there who was a distributor for Oakley. And I started talking to them and I said, hey, you know our brand? They're like, yeah, of course we know our brand. And I said, well, you guys do events? You have like local athletes? And he's like, yeah. So I said, I'll tell you what, let's do a contract with you because you're already going to those events. I don't want to have to do another agreement with the promoter at that BMX event or that music event or whatever it might be. I would just ride along with you. And I met all of their athletes. I met so many different things. And it just snowballed from there that we built the brand really, really quick using the same recipe that we did in Southern California, but just applied it to a different language. And it works. It works.
Yeah, that was
You don't
brilliant.
have to speak, you don't have to speak the same language. The brand and the sports works. That is the language.
That's actually brilliant that you find those local influencers at the grassroots level and grow with them. Grassroots being key, I think, because you're not out there entitling major events. You're finding the people at the enthusiast and the participant level, and you're supporting them and giving them what they need to maybe create those stories and create that media that then promotes Monster. And of course, sampling. You mentioned sampling. Sampling's got to be key because I will say people don't like to go to a grocery store and buy a food or a drink they've never tried before. Usually you only buy things from
Yeah,
the grocery store that you've tried.
sampling is key. Sampling is key. Quality sampling is probably better than quantity sampling.
Okay, explain
You know,
that. Explain what you mean by that.
well, I'll give you an example. Let's see. What, in your opinion, what would be more effective is my question. Having a monster truck out in front of a Albertsons sampling, that's
Okay.
one way you could be effective.
Interesting, yeah.
Or finding out where the BMX kids like to hang out on a Friday night and taking them pizza and Monster.
Yeah. You want to be part of the good time. That way, when they're having a good
Exactly.
time, they remember the brand. Yes.
Exactly right. If I'm just mass sampling, it's just a product, right?
Right.
But
And
we're not selling a product. We're selling a lifestyle. The product just is in the can. That just generates revenue. But we're actually selling a lifestyle. So I would prefer to say sampling more quality sampling than quantity.
that's excellent. I love that you say you're selling a lifestyle because it's so true. Nobody runs to the store and wants to buy a 3/4 inch drill bit. They want a 3/4 inch hole. You had mentioned you're selling a lifestyle, but you also mentioned a target demographic. Who is that target demographic whose lifestyle you're targeting? How would you define the
Well, I
perfect
mean,
monster? Like for an athlete trying to represent the brand, who should they be targeting as their fans?
that's another one that has changed from when we started, right? Originally we only had regular and our low carb, right? That was the two different products that we were making.
Monster
But now
Green.
we make a variety of different performance-based products.
Okay.
We make a variety of no sugar, no calorie, no carbohydrate products. We make products for in the juice category, products in the tea category. So we're so spread out that it's interesting. I mean, you might have like some people in, let's say, the women's CrossFit environment, right? Well, that probably suits our ultra, Monster Ultra, right? It's refreshing, it's light, it's no sugar, no calories,
Okay.
but then we have other products like Rain, for instance, which is a whole other brand of ours. That's more like the weightlifting and all of that stuff, the Ninja Warriors, so we have so many different, I would say, arsenals in our chest now that we really can diversify and depending on the country, depending on the culture of that country, you go to places like Pakistan, for instance, and we have a cricket player who we endorse, who is massive in Pakistan and India, but we don't sponsor cricket.
Okay. Interesting. So that
You
actually
we
leads me to
have
a question then on the life, not the life cycle, but the fiscal year that Monster has versus the fiscal year of some of the events and where the athletes participate. You're all over the world and all over different time zones and in different countries that may not be on a fiscal year that Monster is. How is it that you budget for all these different events that might actually start at different times when maybe your budgeting is already over? So an athlete wants to approach Monster for a sponsorship, but because that athlete's series is not in the same fiscal year as Monsters, does that matter, or is that why you
no,
say
I
start 2 years
not
early?
no. That's never mattered to me.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at like my speedway riders, they physically start racing in May, April,
Okay.
but their contract starts January 1.
Got it.
They
Got it.
finish racing October and their contract ends December 31st at midnight.
That's because that's Monster's fiscal year end, January through December.
And that's easy for me to manage.
Got it. Got it.
You know, I don't want to have a contract starting in October and this guy's ending in November and this guy's this. It's just going to, you know, when I'm looking at, you know, 30 different athletes that I need to manage, for me, it's just January through the year.
That makes sense.
And you know, and then, you know, would I, that starting period, let's say February, like time frame, if I'm really looking to do something in 2023 with someone, I probably start, I mean, depending on the sport, I probably start in February for the next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you looking at any areas now where you don't yet have representation, but you'd like some? Are there any new sports out there? Any new demographics, new
like I
products
said,
that targeting demographics?
Me personally, I'm responsible for the cross country rally environment. So
Okay.
right now I have 4 riders, and I have the team that they ride on, which is the factory HRC rally team. That, you know, basically we race all over the world. And then I've got a couple other riders that race on other teams in the sport. I have a couple that are on another motorsport team, and then I have, you know, I have Austin Jones, you know, who's from, obviously everyone knows, from the US, driving for me under the Can-Am factory program over there. Then I have Nani Roma, who's driving in the Pro Drive, you know, car category, the T1 Plus category. So I try to diversify my message by nation if I can, but it doesn't always work out. But in that spectrum, it's a niche area, you know.
Right.
When I'm working with when I'm working with HRC, I'm working with them on who the next rider should be.
Okay.
And obviously that is a whole program in depth, right? They're looking at riders that have been, you know, that are young, that have been doing it for a little bit, maybe from another discipline,
Right.
bringing them over to rally to find out if rally is something that they want to do, because rally raid is such a niche sport, right? Even though, you know, we talk about Dakar and it's massively, you know, it's the Olympics of off-road. But on the bike side, at the factory level, it's really, really tight. You know, I mean, you look at Ricky Brabeck, you wonder how did that happen? And he probably says, I don't know, it happened. You know, through Johnny Campbell, it just happened, right? It's just a lot of hard work and paying the dues. And so from my side, I mean, yeah, I'm always looking, Alex. You'd have to be not so wise to say, no, I'm not looking, right?
Right.
No different than a sports talent scout. Even though his team is full and his sub layer beneath that's full, you're always looking.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I know your eyes are always open, and you've always been that way. If you, even when you're not looking, you're looking because your radar is always up. I remember that back from the core days.
Yeah.
Are there any athletes who've just lately done an outstanding job that because of COVID, everybody went online and there were no events, but some athletes were still promoting their brands even though they weren't racing? Has anybody done anything that really stuck out that's new and interesting that maybe should be shared where other racers can learn from?
I mean, I think going back to what I said earlier with being able to capture content from the human side.
Yeah.
So when you look at, you know, an athlete that maybe, look at Casey Curry, for instance, use him for an example. He's done a great job.
Yep.
Great job. Why has he done a great job? Because he documents every step he's taking.
Interesting.
Yeah. And he's able to curtail that into creative content, whether the content is from yesterday or, hey, I got nothing going on. Man, we got to find some old content. He regurgitates old content and delivers that up when nothing's going on, right? And so now he's gotten to the point to where he's capturing content for the intention to use when nothing's going on.
Yeah.
But yet at the same time, he's producing content of what is going on. you
Excellent.
know? So from, you look at that model, to me, that's a great model. It's not an easy model. You need to find good creative people around you, which Casey has with Kyle, doing all of his video and editing and all that stuff. But Kyle has to sacrifice a lot, right? Kyle has to sacrifice his own friends, his loved ones, his family. Why? Because he needs to travel and he needs to capture that content. And so that's never ending, you know? So I
Casey's
would say
also really
Casey's
good
done
at
a
putting.
really good job at staying at it.
I think so, and Casey's good at putting sponsors together. He's really good at
Mhm.
co-promoting his sponsors and making sure that they get B2B from each other and they work together to co-promote. I hear
Yeah,
that
he
over and
speaks
over with
well.
Casey.
He represents himself well. You could say he's somewhat of a chameleon. He can hang out with the rock crawlers and have a big old hoot and good time, but yet he can also go up to the corporate offices and get a deal done, and everyone's happy about it, right?
Yeah, nice. So
Yeah.
you're very busy and you travel a lot. And in fact, when we text, sometimes you're all over the world whenever we text. But what's next on your agenda? And let's say someone wanted to meet you because genuinely they have a compelling story that might actually be good for the brand and help Monster promote in an area where Monster doesn't yet have any marketing. How does someone meet you because you travel all the
Well,
time?
I'm at all of the Speedway World Championships. There's
Okay.
10, 11 rounds of that. Um, this weekend I have a weekend off, but the following weekend I'm in the Czech Republic in Prague for round 3 of the World Championship,
Wow.
and then I come back, and then a week later I'm in Germany for round 4, and then I'm home for a day, and then I'm in Spain for a couple of days for round 3 of the World Championship for Rally Raid. Um, yeah.
That's cool. So you're obviously in the Million Mile Club with the airlines.
Well, due to COVID, I got dropped.
That's because you were in the Mile High Club and you got in trouble probably, huh?
I'm still gold. They gave me one more year to maintain it, but unless you're in Europe, flying from a lot of these country to country to country, you don't really rack up a lot of miles like you would think. You'd rack up more segments, you know what I mean? But now
Interesting.
they don't count segments anymore. Um, so
Yeah.
and now that Dakar is in Saudi, that's only a 6-hour flight for me. I don't really get an abundance of air miles per se, right? If I get back to Corona a couple times a year, but once again, because of COVID and pandemic, that's kind of hindered that.
Hmm.
But now that it's all good, we'll start traveling again. You definitely hit 100,000 plus miles a year to maintain, somewhat of a decent, frequent flyer status, so that when you are delayed and you have long connections, you can hop in the business lounge and you can relax and you can get away from the busyness.
Yeah.
But beyond that, that's about all I really use my status for, is just, fast track and priority bag and lounge.
Boom, in and out. Hey.
Yeah.
So how is the environment generally with COVID over all across Europe? You see so many different countries.
I think Spain is the only one that is kind of not hard, but they just, you have to fill out more forms. Yeah.
Okay.
But a lot of the other countries now, nothing.
So it's
Like,
hopefully it
yeah.
seems like we're coming out of it, I guess is what my
Yeah,
question was
like
is.
like I can fly from Poland to the UK, and I don't have to wear masks.
Oh, nice.
I don't have to validate my vaccines anymore. I don't have to quarantine, uh, even if I test positive, you
Oh,
know?
wow.
Yeah, so it's becoming more and more relaxed. Let's just hope it stays that way.
Yeah, really.
But like I said, we just had a big event here in Warsaw, indoor stadium with 55,000 people, no masks, no COVID, no restrictions, no validations of vaccines, nothing. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you just answered my next question, which was going to be how is event attendance? And it sounds like it's right on. How about
You know, this
participant
year,
attendance.
I think this year you're going to see an explosion of attendance at all across the world. You know, people are starting to get out and have a good time.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree
the
with
few
that.
events that I've already been to this year, that's what the message is. You know, they just want to get out and have a good time because they missed it. They haven't been able to do it, and we might not be able to do it tomorrow like it happened before, right?
Right, right. No, that's true. It was a very fast and interesting 2 years that just went by. Sort of changed everything. Um, Even
You
me.
know,
Now I'm
it's
going
it,
online
it,
doing
it's
my lessons.
you know, COVID was an interesting time. You know, for certain peoples, it was the worst, right? The worst case scenario, and for others, maybe the best case scenario, right? In my case, it slowed me down. Yeah, it made me focus on what's in front of me. You
Interesting.
know, life's not a race. You know, it's more about the quality of life, not the quantity, right?
And we don't learn that until
Um,
we get older. We unfortunately, I
no,
wish
you're
I knew
right.
that when I was
And
young.
then COVID brought a lot of health awareness to me. You
That's
know,
true.
I'm 52 years of age. I mean, I can't do the same things when I was 22, right? So I have to exercise. I have to.
Right.
If I don't, then you know, I'm just gonna dwindle down.
Yep. Yep.
But COVID was a wake up call to that. That gave me that time to reset. And now that it's part of my life, you tend to feel more balanced on a lot of things, you know, um, not quick to make a decision, uh, enjoy what's in front of you, you know, take time to spend with friends and family,
Yes.
uh, go out of the blue and maybe someone you haven't spoken to in a while, just say, hey, I'm just thinking of you, hello.
Exactly.
Because a lot of people were probably trapped in their houses and didn't get to see their friends and may have lost loved ones in that time. There was a lot of lost time, right?
True.
So for me, I think COVID was a good wake up call to reality of life.
And it
Yeah.
also it made us all go online where we started appreciating digital connections and this electronic highway that connects brands to their customers and
Yeah.
athletes to their fans and allows instantaneous communication and correspondence. Even if an event's not happening, you can still go behind the scenes with athletes to see what they're doing, and it built a closer personal relationship instead of just that professional athlete business relationship, if that makes sense. A lot of these athletes
No,
became
absolutely.
friends
There
instead of
were
just
uh,
idols.
there were a lot of, I would say, occasions where you'd have, let's say, one athlete, calling up another athlete on Instagramming live, and all of their followers are tuning into that, right? And it's just a casual conversation. There's nothing special about it. It's McGrath and Carmichael having a conversation together,
Right.
right? And all of a sudden you have, hundreds of thousand people wanting to tune into that. There was a lot of that stuff, and I think that's all good stuff that the digital world has brought us, right? But now that it's over, you know,
Hey, I feel
uh,
blessed. I have Parsons on the Striler show right now, so I'm feeling like pretty good about this. It's like, hey, I got Joe
it's
Parson on my
I
show.
think it's a good thing. I mean, all of these different talk things, we didn't have these when we were
Right.
younger. We didn't have any of the social elements. you
Exactly.
know I couldn't even imagine, maybe if we had this stuff I would never even have paid attention to it back then. Who knows, right? I'm gonna go surfing, you know what I mean?
Exactly, exactly. Hey, we'd be playing
But
video games. Speaking of video games, sim racing seemed to have become very popular because a lot of pro racers bought simulators and then started practicing and even racing simulators. Are you involved with that at all? Do you deal with any athletes on the virtual
I'm
side,
I'm not
online racing?
involved. We aren't involved in per se sim racing. We would, I mean, the way we would get involved in it would be an organic way, right? Let's say a Kurt Busch gets invited to race in a sim race,
Okay.
right? Well, Kurt's a monster guy. That's how we would organically get in it. You know what I
Okay.
mean? And that's how I feel any time we get into the digital space, anybody can brand a vehicle and put it in a game.
It's a little hard to hand
But
out
does that
samples online, right?
but does that vehicle truly live outside the game? Is it a replica? You look at Ken Block's videos, Dirt. So here they took his real car, right, and they brought it into the video game. That's the perfect organic way to get involved in that, as opposed to just paying for ad space to be on the
Yes.
game.
Yes.
Yeah,
That is true. What type of
much
media
harder.
over? Oh, go ahead, Joe.
I said it's much harder to achieve those, right? But once you do achieve them, I mean, they're pretty good.
It is. So overseas, so I'm based out of the United States, obviously Southern California, and I typically consume mostly media that I'm used to here. Is media the same in Europe and the Middle East and Africa as it is in the United States? Is there linear television on one end and streamed video on the other, and YouTube, or how is media consumed in your
I would say
markets?
it's no different than the northern market.
Okay.
You're going to have, the older generation, on your typical broadcast network, right?
Okay.
With like a direct TV plug-in, let's say, right? So they got their cable channels through their direct TV, but then they have their national channels, they're free to air TVs, yeah? Then you're going to have the younger generation that's going to be Twitch, they're going to be on Instagram, they're going to be on all the socials, they're going to probably subscribe to a specific sport channel or this to stream their stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
streaming
I'm
is
asking from an athlete's
becoming,
perspective then how the athlete creates media for Monster overseas. So it's about the same then as here in the US.
yeah, I mean, it's for me, media comes second.
Ah, interesting. Okay. Let's go deeper on that. You want the story
An
first.
example, let's say we're involved in a big event. We'll use back in the day core, for instance. Yeah. So let's say you get heavily involved in a program
Yeah.
and the racing and everything else fails. But the TV's there, everybody's watching, and all the people on site have to go home because the race is canceled.
Good
So for
point.
me, what's important is what happens on the track. That's the most important. You got to get that right. The organizers got to get that right so that the people at the event, those are my people. They've chosen to get out of the house. They've chosen to drive down the road or get on a plane or a train to come and see that event. That experience needs to be priority. The rest is just added value.
Okay.
But if you get that wrong, that added value can hurt you.
That's true. It can misrepresent the brand if it doesn't look high class or if it's cheesy or if it's low quality and doesn't look
Yeah.
legitimate. I could see that. You
Yeah. I
only
mean,
want
how
to.
many times have you heard people talking about, oh, I tried to watch this and it was, buffering and the stream was shitty and this and that, and you just turned off a potential new consumer
Yes, yes, exactly. So
by
part
trying
of
to
it is
go
making
too
sure the
far.
consumer's having a good time and enjoying the experience, whether it's a live experience or online experience. And if the consumer's enjoying the experience, then they feel good about the brand, and then that elevates the equity value of the brand, the intangible equity, I should say.
Exactly.
Nice.
So the TV companies and the broadcasters, they always come to you quick with those numbers. But it's funny when I'm at the event and you give me these numbers and I go, the racing was shit. That doesn't mean nothing. That means that many more people watch shit.
Uh,
You know, and they go, well, what do you mean? I go, well, I'm spoiled. I go to 150 races a year. That was not a good race.
Exactly.
You know, and the core audience in here knows it,
Yeah.
right? And the core audience at home knows it. You're always going to have the, you know, the keyboard warrior, that core guy at home, or that core guy in the grandstands. And no matter how good of a night of racing you think you had, there's going to be a few people that can pick something that wasn't good.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
No, that
And
makes
how
sense.
do we learn from those little small pieces that someone said, no, it wasn't good? Well, why wasn't it good? How can we make it good? I'm not worried about the guy at home at TV. I'm worried about the guy sitting in front of me watching the event live.
That's perfect. And that's a really good segue to, let me ask one final question. We're almost on the hour mark, and sometimes Zoom clicks off here. We didn't get to run over to my other camera because the conversation was so good. But what advice do you have to any new or young athlete that's looking to become sponsored, not necessarily by Monster, but just in general, get a good solid non-endemic, because a lot of the racers get endemic sponsorships through products. They get wheels, tires, you know, and it helps them win the race, obviously, but a lot of racers need money. And Monster Energy is a non-endemic. Typically, you're giving more money than I think pallets of Monster Energy drink to some of your teams. So if a team is looking for that type of a sponsor, is there any general advice that you have of how to balance out the endemics versus the non-endemics and seeking non-endemic sponsorships?
I wish it was that easy. It would make my job that much easier, right?
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah, but it really is, you know, if there's one thing I learned a lot about growing up and working with Robbie Gordon is you bang on 10 doors and one's going to open.
Huh. Good point.
Don't give up. Like, you got to keep banging on doors.
Yeah, true.
Don't take no for an answer. Like, go to the next door. I mean, you never know what's behind the door. That's first of all. Second of all is never burn your bridges, right? Always network as much as you can. Try to be as honest as you can, especially in this racing industry. You can come across some people who are not very honest. And maybe they're looking good right now, and maybe they're making a bunch of money right now. And you look back and you're like, wow, why is that guy doing so much better than me? And he's such a, you know, he's always effing this, effing that. And you're the honest guy. But you know what? At the end, the honest guy wins. And I think people just need to focus on being honest and being realistic too, you know, like how many times someone walks up to you and says, hey, let me have your hat. You know, it's like, well, how realistic is that request?
That's great.
You know?
I like when you used to go and take pockets full of cash and say, here, put on my hat to X
Yeah.
Games. Those are the good old days.
Yeah, now it's, you know, it's beautiful. It's crazy. It's romantic where this company from Corona, California, you know, where it is now, and that iconic Monster M Claw that no matter where you go in the world, people know it, you know?
Well, you know that I started with Hanson's back in the day, and I worked at Hanson's when I was in college in the 80s, which when I first met you, you were working for Hanson's because the Monster brand was just a subdivision of Hanson's, and it grew so fast. Revenue's now in the billions that Monster diversified of Hanson's, all the all natural energy or all natural sodas and juices, and now it just focuses only on the Monster brand energy drink itself.
Monster Beverage Company just bought a beer company.
Oh, good for you. I'm jealous. All right, so do you have a guest room? I'm going to be coming over there and visiting.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what the leadership out of Corona does with the new beer company that they just bought, you know?
Well, listen, Joe, I really appreciate the time that you took today. I know it's getting late over there in Poland, and I know that you're working late.
8 o'clock, just about time to put my boy to bed.
Right on, right on. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you. Next time you come to Corona, you got to give me a call. I'll come up and we'll visit. And if there are any events that you're going to here in the United States.
Yeah, sometime in November, I'll bring the family out.
Right on. I may be in Germany before then. I could do a puddle jumper over to Poland and come say hi. It'd be fun to get together.
Come on over. Come see one of these crazy speedway races.
Right on. Well, the next time I think I'll see you will be online at the virtual summit next month, the Motorsports Sponsorship Summit that I'm hosting. Look forward to you participating in that. It's going to be good.
All righty.
Content is always great. Joe, thank you very much. Awesome.
No problem. Thank you.
Great segment. Take care,
Appreciate
bud.
it.
I'll see you.
Take care.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you,
All right.
Alan.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.